My name is Lawrence Golan, and I'm the Director of Orchestral Studies at the Lamont School of Music and head of the conducting program. Um, my path really started as a violinist. I started my career as a professional violinist. Um, my first job was as principal second violinist of the Honolulu Symphony Orchestra. That was rough. Then I went from there to become concertmaster of the Portland Symphony Orchestra in Portland, Maine. And I actually sort of came upon conducting almost by accident. That position in Portland turned out to be a joint position between the Portland Symphony Orchestra and the University of Southern Maine, where they decided they would appoint whoever became concertmaster of the symphony to be director of the string program and conductor of the orchestra at the university. And I wound up winning that position. So I, again, fell into conducting almost by accident and fell into academia almost by accident. Then, once I started conducting and started teaching, I actually really enjoyed both of them. And in terms of conducting, wanted to further develop my skills, and I went back to school, went to do my doctorate at the New England Conservatory of Music, where I studied both violin and conducting. I started going to all these different festivals and workshops, and ultimately wound up at the two premier conducting festivals, which are Tanglewood and Aspen. I was the Leonard Bernstein Conducting Fellow at Tanglewood, and then the American Academy of Conducting at Aspen Fellow. Then I started pursuing full-time conducting jobs. I decided I would like to go into conducting full-time, and that's how I wound up here at Lamont. They had an opening for conductor of the Lamont Symphony Orchestra and Lamont Opera Theater, and teacher of conducting, and it looked like a wonderful position, and I was lucky enough to be offered the position, and that's how I wound up here. I would say there are several things that guide my teaching philosophy. One is not necessarily having a set plan for every conducting student I have. Rather, I like to take each student and work with their strengths and address their weaknesses, which are often very different from each other. So not every student necessarily learns the same things, and we don't focus on the same things. Also, I like to lead by example, and I do have a professional conducting career in addition to my academic career. And so, I'm conducting orchestras throughout the country and internationally, and I like to bring those experiences to my teaching. So very little, if any, is theoretical book learning. It's more based on my experience and providing hands-on experiences for the conducting students. So the conducting program at the Lamont School of Music is very much connected to the Lamont Symphony Orchestra and the Lamont Opera Theater. A lot of schools have a conducting lab or a conducting ensemble that the conducting students work with. We don't do that here. Our conducting students actually work on a regular basis with the Lamont Symphony Orchestra and the Lamont Opera Theater. I only take one conducting student per year, and the reason for that is actually manifold. First of all, it provides for maximum podium time for the students. I think any prospective conducting student will tell you one thing they're looking for most is podium time. You can read about conducting all you want, you can learn about the stick technique all you want, but really it's all about getting in front of an orchestra. And so by taking only one student at a time, or I should say one student a year, that does provide for maximum conducting opportunities. Throughout the year, any given conducting student has many different opportunities to conduct both orchestra and operatic literature. They have several concert appearances with the Lamont Symphony Orchestra throughout the year. Their second year, get the entire orchestra at their disposal to have their graduate conducting recital. They also work with the Lamont Opera Theater quite a bit. You see, the orchestra and the opera students rehearse at the same time. So when we're in opera season, there will be days where I'll work with the orchestra and the graduate conducting students work with the singers, and the next day we'll switch. I'll work with the singers and the graduate conducting students work with the orchestra. Again, going back to the experience, this isn't theoretical. Almost everything we do at Lamont with the conducting students it's actual rehearsals for actual performances, both orchestral and operatic. A typical schedule for an orchestral conducting student at Lamont would look like this. On Mondays, we have our private lessons where we discuss the scores, we watch videos of them conducting and talk about conducting technique and rehearsal technique, which is very important. Then we go on to Lamont Symphony Orchestra and/or opera rehearsal, depending on what time of year it is. And we have the actual rehearsals. Sometimes I'll be conducting and the conducting students will be observing that. Other times they'll be on the podium and I'll be observing them. And the same goes for rehearsals with the singers as part of the opera program. Wednesdays is very similar. We have Lamont Symphony Orchestra rehearsals and opera rehearsals. Now, Tuesdays and Thursdays are primarily devoted to either private study or any other classes that the conducting students might need to take. And Tuesdays and Thursdays is when the graduate conducting students will teach basic conducting class, a class that is taken by the undergrads and taught by our graduate conducting students. Denver is actually a wonderful place for a young conductor. There are many different professional and community orchestras in the region. There are many different churches that have music director positions. And I have to say that my conducting students, I will freely admit, have an unfair advantage. And that is because almost invariably, whenever any of these organizations have an opportunity for a conductor, they contact me and I recommend my graduate conducting students. In particular, there's a wonderful opportunity with the Denver Philharmonic Orchestra, which I also happen to be music director of. And because of that relationship, my conducting students each year become the associate and assistant conductors of the Denver Philharmonic. And that's just a wonderful experience for them. It pretty much doubles the amount of podium time and repertoire that they do each year. I would say a conducting student might want to come to the Lamont School of Music for a couple of different reasons. One, first and foremost, has to be the amount of podium time. I would venture to say that a conducting student will get more podium time with the real symphony orchestra and the real opera program as opposed to conducting ensembles or lab orchestras than they would at many other different institutions. Secondly, the relationship with the Denver Philharmonic is extremely attractive. To have that virtually guaranteed opportunity to become associate or assistant conductor of the Denver Philharmonic. And finally, I would say many graduate students like the notion of studying with somebody who actually is out there conducting professionally. Some people choose to be in academia or choose to be conducting professionally, but not too many people do both. And I've been fortunate enough to have a foot in both camps, and I think conducting students really appreciate that because I share with them my experiences weekly. When I come back from conducting about all sorts of different things, not only the technique of conducting, rehearsal technique, but also working with the board of directors, fundraising, audience engagement, all of these things that are so important and very rarely taught at conservatories.